There have been fast-paced developments that have taken place in a span of just an entire hour in the United Kingdom. This entire brouhaha broke up after Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary of the United Kingdom, came on harshly on the UK police, the Metropolitan Police, and said that they were favouring the pro-Palestinian protesters and the pro-Palestinian marches that have been taking place in swarms and swarms of people, hundreds and thousands of them swarming the streets of Britain. She had also called out these marches, saying that these are pro-Palestinian marches, which are pro-Palestinian marches under the garb of hiding the Hamas terrorism that emanates out of Gaza Strip. Now, after that, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been forced to fire Suella Braverman as his Home Secretary because of the mounting pressure from activists, from protesters, from the pro-Gaza, pro-Palestinian activists, media channels, international activists and organizations as well. Meanwhile, there's also information pouring in that David Cameron has now been appointed as the Foreign Secretary. He has been the Prime Minister of United Kingdom in the past as well. There's James Cleverly, who has now become the Home Secretary. Starting off this discussion, Ambassador Suresh Goyal on the telecast with me. And Ambassador, in quick succession, it looks like the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has a lot to deal with. It's all started off with the Palestinian crisis. And does it look like UK is succumbing to it, as is America and the rest of the Western world?
Difficult to say really, Megha, because the demonstrations, the pro-Palestinian demonstrations are taking place all over Europe, but how it impacts on the domestic politics will be different for the different countries. In the USA, I don't think that the pro-Palestinian demonstrations are going to impact on the future of Biden so much. But the fact is that in the case of UK, where the Conservatives are already facing problems, tough challenges from the Labour, and they are looking basically at survival of the government in many ways, even though they're on various issues. This kind of a challenge coming from the pro-Palestinian demonstrations, but also the way Suella Braverman has dealt with the issue, creating another fission in the domestic polity. That I think the ultra-rightist fragment in the Conservative Party is going to face a huge challenge to Rishi Sunak. I think it's a clever move to really get David Cameron to be the Foreign Secretary, because he will bring his own camp now to support Rishi Sunak, and Jeremy Hunt staying on as a Chancellor. So those are good signs. But I think the fact is that the factions like Suella Braverman and the removing Suella Braverman is going to pose certain challenges to Rishi Sunak, and it will be really we will need to see how he deals with those intra-party challenges in the coming days. Megha.
Professor Madhav Nalapat, now Suella Braverman has been a firebrand of a minister. She had earlier spoken and stringently acted upon the immigration crisis that United Kingdom faces. But this particularly, the Palestinian issue, over the pro-Palestinian rallies that have been taking place, there has been the number of universities, their professors, their students who have come out with these charters in support of the Hamas terrorists. Under the garb of the pro-Palestinian protests that have been taking place, activism that has been taking place worldwide, whether it is UK or US or Canada or Australia or the rest of Europe, we have been seeing this with our own eyes, and visuals on my screens just a while ago of these, swarms of people, hundreds and thousands of them. There are several others who had swarmed into the Capitol Hill. Some of the key landmark areas in London, in United Kingdom, had also been taken control of, seized by these protesters. So what's wrong when Suella Braverman says that these are hate marches, these are campaigns that are leading to extremism and volatility in London, in United Kingdom?
Well, this is the second time that Suella Braverman has been sacked as the Home Secretary. The first time was when Liz Truss was the Prime Minister.
Yes.
At that point in time, Liz Truss wanted her to go, and she used a very technical excuse that she had basically sent some draft cabinet papers to a fellow member of parliament on her personal email. That is frankly, a lot of people have done that in the UK, and but Liz Truss used that to sack her. The fact is, Suella Braverman wants to be the Prime Minister of the UK. She's not content with being Home Secretary, and she has very quietly been mobilizing a challenge towards Rishi Sunak. Now, I think what the reason given by Downing Street for this particular sacking was that Suella Braverman wrote a piece in the London Times, which was not pre-cleared by the Prime Minister's office. When important secretaries to government write in a major newspaper and give controversial views, they're expected to clear it before the Prime Minister's office. It was not done, I'm told. And as a consequence, basically, there was very bad blood between Suella Braverman and 10 Downing Street. Now, yes, you're quite right. The fact is that her views are very popular with about half of the British public. Very, very popular. And unpopular with a very large segment of the British public.
Right.
Now, the point is very simple. The point is, she wrote an article in the Times basically openly attacking the London police. And the chief commissioner of the London police had to give a public statement against the Home Secretary saying, no, this is not factually correct. The London police has not been acting in a biased manner. And it is very unusual, first of all, for a Home Secretary to publicly rebuke the Metropolitan Police, and secondly, for the Metropolitan Police Commissioner to openly basically refute charges made by the Home Secretary in one of the leading newspapers in the UK. So altogether, I think, frankly, Ms. Braverman has basically acted like a bit of a loose cannon. And I think that Rishi Sunak was under terrific pressure to basically make her leave the government.
Okay.
But let me also say that her views are very popular among a section of the Conservative Party.
Right.
And at least 50 members of Parliament strongly support these views and are very unhappy at the sacking of Suella Braverman.
Interesting here with these fast-paced political developments that have taken place under Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in United Kingdom. Captain Alok Bansal, now this is an interesting question that I would like to get a response and analysis from. Is there a concerted effort by the current government, Conservative government, to appease a certain section of the society with this stringent action that has been taken? It's a visible action. It is a pressure, of course, that has been mounted on Rishi Sunak to finally come down on Suella Braverman.
See, there is no doubt that Suella Braverman's views actually represent a hardcore right-wing conservative grouping within the party, which is extremely supportive of it, which feels that these pro-Palestine demonstrations have taken City of London as hostage. And I think she said that this doesn't look okay and the police must crack down on that. But at the same time, we also need to understand that today UK has a very, very substantive immigrant population. Suella Braverman herself is representative of that. I think her rise to that level shows that the immigrants in UK have come of age. And amongst the immigrants, there is a huge section of Muslim population which is at this point of time extremely sympathetic to the Palestinian cause.
Right.
And consequently, especially the City of London, where you have a very, very strong hold of theirs, they have been protesting. And I think in all opinion polls that have been taking place for some time, Rishi Sunak has been trailing, the Conservative Party has been trailing the Labour Party. So obviously they want to gain ground and probably poach on some of the Labour supporters. And that's probably the reason that why Rishi Sunak and the Labour Party has been moving a little bit centrist. Secondly, we need to understand that criticizing your own police, Metropolitan Police, is something that is even unacceptable to a traditional conservative. See, I'm not talking of extreme right-wing conservative. They have their views, but despite that, criticizing your own army, criticizing your own police is something which is unacceptable. And I think that is where I think the Suella did cross the Rubicon. She tried to make up for it now making the statement that they are doing a wonderful job and all that subsequently. But I think it was a case of too little, too late. And I think she had to go, because I think Rishi Sunak was under immense pressure from the other side that this sort of statement cannot continue. And I think we have seen the manifestation of that in her sacking.
Professor D.K. Giri, now Rishi Sunak himself has been very aggressive in condemning the terrorist attacks of Hamas on Israel. There have been subdued statements on the contrary that have been made by the US Secretary of the State Antony Blinken, talking about ceasefire, but such a statement has not come from Rishi Sunak even up until now. Now, in a situation such as this, where there is a hardliner conservative government, the Tories that have taken control, that are ruling, and the likelihood of Rishi Sunak perhaps not gaining a second term come the next election, again puts forth immense pressure on the government. But at the same time, when we take a look at the India view, when there is this blatant attacks on Hindus and the desecration of our temples, there's the Leicester killings and the attacks that took place, how conducive is should I say, an Islamist environment that is now growing stronger in strength?
Well, British politics is quite different from the rest of the world, really. You see all kinds of contradictions in British society and politics. You call them contradictions or diversity. You see, when the British government was supporting apartheid in South Africa, the British public was demonstrating day in and day out against it. So the public may have a view. You are right. Rishi Sunak is not even supporting a ceasefire in the war in Middle East. You see, so the government is solidly behind Israel, but the people, whatever is the composition, their demographic and ethnic, religious composition, they are opposing it. 300,000 people marched in Britain. But so that is the nature of British society, really. It has been so. The government will take a line and the people will have another line. I mean, Rishi Sunak is losing, that is for sure. I was in the British Labour Party conference in October in Liverpool, and the opinion polls and public are sure that unless they do something ghastly wrong, British Labour Party will come to power. Yeah. It is not the politics. It is not the politics that has caused the sacking of Suella Braverman. She was trying to be more loyal than the king. She may be addressing a particular audience, but she has committed ministerial impropriety, which is not acceptable. She defied Rishi Sunak. She wrote a letter on 10th of October to all the chief constables, saying all kinds of things and criticizing her own police. That is not acceptable in Britain. And Rishi Sunak had no choice but to sack her.
Okay, now Ambassador Suresh Goyal, then, this is domestic politics of United Kingdom, but I want to take a look at a larger geopolitical view of the Israel onslaught on Hamas and the Palestinian humanitarian crisis that is emanating out of Gaza Strip currently. Is Israel losing the information warfare?
Interesting question. Is Israel losing the information warfare? So far as that is concerned, I think looking at the public opinion, practically all over the world, it is quite clear that most of the people are actually looking at the situation as Israeli, they call it genocide. It is described as a massacre. It is described as inhumanitarian. There are severe criticism of Israeli action. In Europe, all over Europe practically, even though the governments in Europe are more or less uniformly in support of Israeli action and completely looking at Hamas action as a cause for generating this. So that is a part of the dichotomy from which the international opinion is looking at it. I don't think we should look at really Israel being very concerned about the information warfare. If you look at our own media, they are in Tel Aviv practically the entire 24 hours, sending images from Tel Aviv about what is happening in Gaza, and these are clearly Israeli images. So where do I see Israel losing information warfare in India? Maybe in Europe they have a view. and I may have a different view. That's entirely different. The point really here is whether ultimately in Palestine, Israel is going to prevail, or is Palestine going to go away as a matter of history? No mention of Palestine anywhere at all. It's a question of really geopolitics,
Okay.
not information warfare. Yes.
Talking about geopolitics and India's view on the situation, India's stand in the situation from 7th of October, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi has come out and strongly condemned the Hamas terrorist attack. And yesterday, in the last 24 hours, there has been a United Nations resolution that has come out against Israel for the quote-unquote illegal occupation of Palestinian territory, whether it is in West Bank, or it is in Gaza Strip, or for that matter, the Syrian area of Golan Heights. Now, Ambassador, a question carrying forth to what you commented, and also, there have been questions and concerns being raised by particularly the Israeli government, that why has India up until now shied away from designating Hamas as a terrorist organization?
I think the very first tweet on the 7th of October, Prime Minister made it very clear that Hamas is a terrorist organization. Officially, we have never described Hamas as a terrorist organization. But officially, we have also not said that Hamas is Palestine or Hamas is in the government. We all know that the administration or the political governance in Palestine between the West Bank and Hamas was fractured many years ago, and Hamas was actually encouraged by Israel as a challenge to PNA. We all know the history. That is not the point again, Megha. I think what we are really looking at is that the current government of India has decided to support Israel on this issue of Hamas, and we are going all the way to basically support Israeli action in Gaza as a kind of a retribution for what Hamas did on the 7th of October.
Okay.
And people may agree, they may not agree. There is opposition to it. If I say anything, I will be giving my personal point of view, and I want to avoid it. I want to avoid being personal on this issue, and therefore the government position, I'm describing what it is, and there is a very strong opposition to this in India at a political level. So be it. But the fact is that the Indian position seems to be completely aligned to Israel and the USA, and that is what we have to go by.
Professor Nalapat, the same question, very interesting. When it comes to a clampdown, a crackdown that has been made by Israeli Defense Forces on Hamas terrorist organization, up until a few weeks ago, it was the West, India, who had been coming together, condemning the Hamas attack, telling Israel that they stand unilaterally in support of the self-defense rights of Israel over the 7th October attacks. Do you see there is rolling back, the government's taking a sidestep, taking a step back in wake of these opposition rallies from activists, students, professors from Ivy Leagues, and politicians in the opposition as well, whether it is in UK, US, or now in India?
Look, I don't see a rolling back for a simple reason that that particular UN resolution was about illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. And the fact is that those settlers have no right to be there. The West Bank is Palestinian territory, and there is no business for the settlers to go and settle down there and drive the Palestinians away from that land. And it's no one's case that in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority is encouraging terror groups such as Hamas. So that was the UN resolution. I want to say, go forward with what you're saying about InfoWar. You look at TikTok in the United States, in the UK. I mean, those TikToks are in English. Presumably there are variations in other languages as well. They are highly inflammatory. People have been posting the most inflammatory things in TikTok. And a lot of that may be AI inspired. A lot of the images seem to be fake images, but it gives a horrible picture, especially of what Israel is doing. And I think that is one of the reasons why India very wisely under Prime Minister Modi banned TikTok early on. But unfortunately, almost no other country has followed suit. So I'd only like to point out that India has been very clear. It opposes terror, and this particular attack was an attack, a terror attack. There's no question about it. At the same time, India also would not like to see civilians, especially women and children, suffer unduly from the pressure of wartime, and every effort has got to be made to minimize that suffering. Thirdly, India will certainly not welcome illegal settlements, because don't forget, such illegal settlements, apart from 2 or 3 other actions by right-wing groups in the Netanyahu government who do not accept the idea of Palestine at all. The only rational solution is a two-state solution. Hamas does not believe in that. It believes only in a single state. And there are people in Netanyahu's government who don't believe in Palestine, and they want to take over that entire territory. India is obviously not in favor of that. India wants a two-state solution, and that is why the policy of India has been overall a very balanced policy under the Prime Minister.
Okay. All right. Professor Giri, coming back to you about how does Israel stand in the thick of things here, because now the world just a few weeks ago coming out in support of Israeli self-defense against Hamas terrorist attack, to now focusing on the humanitarian crisis that has now emanated out of Gaza Strip. Is there a ceasefire that is a likelihood now, the pressure mounting on Israel?
There may be a brief pause, but Israel will not give up the fight until it secures the 2 objectives of the war it is engaged in. One is to eliminate the military capability of Hamas. Second is to get their hostages back. How many of them are alive, we do not know. But these are the 2 war objectives. Until that is secured, Israel are not going to stop. But I just want to add one sentence to what Professor Nalpat said. It is correct, but India also is following what is called from non-alignment to multi-alignment. So, it would be with Arab countries, and it is also with Israel on against terrorism, etc. So, this has been latest India's policy, which is, I think, fair enough. That is clear. But your question, coming back to the question, Israel will not stop until really they eliminate the Hamas completely. Nothing is going to stop them. Because Netanyahu is on record saying, we have made a mistake of listening to the world, and we are not going to listen to their moral tones any longer until our people are secure.
Okay, yeah. But Captain Alok Bansal, the moot point over here, the argument that is being raised is Hamas a terrorist organization, or has Israel and the Jews become terrorists?
See, let there be no doubt that Hamas is a radical organization espousing an ideology that borders on terrorism. So they are a quasi-terrorist organization. The government of India designates them or not, but you can consider them for all practical purposes as a terrorist organization. Having said that, there is a fact that Hamas's capture of Gaza has actually been facilitated by the Israeli government. The fact that Palestinian Authority was cut down to size and was restricted to West Bank is actually a device that was actually created by the Israeli government, primarily to not fulfilling the agreements that they had accepted in Camp David agreement, actually not fulfilling the 2-state solution in toto. And now that this has happened, so they also bear a share of blame, and there is no doubt that irrespective of what Mr. Netanyahu might say, the day this war ends, he goes. So he knows it very well. So it is in his interest that this war lingers on, drags on, and extends. And that's why he's talking of 90 days and elimination, complete elimination, all those things. And I think no sane person could have condoned what Hamas did. But the way we are seeing now civilian casualties and collateral damage, I think certain amount of restraint will have to be exercised by the Israeli forces, and it may be prudent for the international community to facilitate some sort of a ceasefire. But Hamas doesn't want a ceasefire. Netanyahu also won't want a ceasefire. Please understand, when Hamas launched that attack, they knew what was coming their way. It was a quasi-suicide attack where they accepted a disproportionate large reaction from Israel because it served their purpose. What was the purposes of Hamas? They didn't want Arab states gravitating towards Israel. They have facilitated that. The countries like Saudi Arabia, which were drifting towards Israel, have been stopped. Palestinian Authority has actually lost a lot of credibility because now an ordinary Palestinian sees Hamas as the only antidote to Israel. Within the Arab streets, they have gained a lot of traction. And this particular issue of Palestine, which had been designated to the back burners as far as the Middle East was concerned, where other conflicts like Yemen, Syria, etc. had taken front space, have now, Palestinian issue has again come back on front stage. So to a very great extent, Hamas has achieved all its objectives. And I don't think so they are very keen on having a ceasefire immediately. So that's
okay.
So I think both sides want to fight, and this will drag on for some time, as I see.
Okay. All right. I'm out of time, but I thank all my panelists for joining me on this telecast and sharing your views on the subject. I'm out of time, but we'll always keep a close track on these big developments that are now coming out of the rest of the world and in India as well over the Middle Eastern crisis, where the epicenter is Gaza Strip between Israel and Palestine.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.